Shady behavior, you say? Sounds like my type of YouTube video. But before we get started talking about all of the weird, wacky things that have happened since news broke of Logan Paul's fake first edition base set booster case, let's roll that intro. Hey Gengar Gang, what is going on? My name is Ryan, this is the Analytic Gengar, and welcome to another video. In today's video, friends, we talk about Logan Paul's base set case being fake, and more importantly, this really cool Pokeju article that I found, basically outlining all the crazy stuff that has happened since that news broke. And shockingly enough, I thought the story would end with, the announcement that the box was fake, but I could not be more wrong because there is so much more to unpack here. There are some really interesting ties and really interesting reactions that have been happening since, and so it looks like this story could be a lot bigger than even what we originally thought it could be. And the reason that is because it may involve a lot more people, it may involve a lot more reactions, and it may have some major implications for some otherwise very visible people within our hobby. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Of course, as we always do before we get started, take note that the link to this article will be down below. I'm not going to read every single word because it is a bit of a lengthy article, but what I will do is point out some of the major points of the article. I definitely encourage you to go show some support to Pokeju. As always, if you like today's content, you learn anything new, or you want to show some support to the channel, as always, you can leave a like down below on the video, and hey, if you're not already, feel free to subscribe to join the Gengar Gang. But with all that said, let's go ahead and jump right on into this. So, obviously, the main sentence here is that, yeah, it is indeed a fake booster case of booster boxes. Here you can see some of the really neat photos. I guess these are stills that they captured from the video, and I'll actually be doing a little bit more of a deeper dive into the counterfeiting of these boxes, but just at a high level, you can see that the colors look a little flush here. One of the things I notice is that first edition stamps tend to be black, or at least be very dark in terms of their coloration. These look almost blue, at least in this photo, and that might be photo settings as well. Here's another really good look, and again, you can see the color is near identical. The other thing is the wrapping on this stuff. It looks like a very poorly wrapped box. It doesn't even have the WotC prints, which is why I actually thought it was quite funny when everyone was reacting the way they were in the video that Logan Paul posted, because the WotC logos being missing is an immediate red flag. Here we have the G.I. Joe cards in the box, which is a pretty good indication that at least at some point in the past, these boxes would have had to be opened up. My concern, legitimately speaking, is that these boxes aren't even real. And again, I'll try not to get into the depths of counterfeiting, but usually what ends up happening in order to make a very good fake, you would need a real box. So one of the things is, although it is a resealed box, many of the pieces of the resealed box are actually real, legitimate items from real legitimate booster boxes in the past. That's why there's usually a thriving, if not underhanded, second market for things like opened booster packs, open booster boxes. Even the plastic wrap that goes around booster boxes does carry a premium on it, because some people will try to reseal boxes using all of that stuff. So at some point they had to open that up and drop in these G.I. Joe packs. You could tell the counterfeiter really wasn't trying to make a very compelling set of cases, which at least in my head indicates to me that they really weren't concerned that this would ever be opened up. So I think the intention was to create a booster case, seal it, and then, the weight could be off, right? Because the card stock for G.I. Joe packs is completely different than Pokemon packs, and if you were attempting to create a sealed booster box, you would have ideally wanted it to weigh pretty much identical to, how much a legitimate box would weigh. But the fact that they were just throwing in G.I. Joe packs to fill in space over here probably leads me to believe that there was very little to no concern over the weight on this stuff, meaning these boxes were very likely put together to be put into this booster case, sealed, and then the assumption was that they would never be opened. Here's Logan Paul reacting, and I believe that is everything from, the highlights of the video. So, the article is broken up into a couple different sections. The first one is threats, possible bribery from Jacob Gabe. So Jacob Gabe is this guy right here that you're seeing on screen, aka Card Kahuna. Now, I already did a video kind of outlining Logan's video, and Logan's video does a great job of outlining basically the entire transaction history that is relevant to Logan Paul as it relates to all of the work that was being done to, kind of piece together the way that this box ended up with Logan. So, long story short, Card Kahuna had some rather unsavory things to say in regards to everything. So obviously this entire Logan Paul fiasco started when Rattle posted some videos questioning the authenticity of Logan Paul's booster case. He put together a pretty compelling amount of evidence that called into question everything from the case itself and certain defects on the case, all the way up to the actual history of the case, which popped up in March of 2021 on eBay. And interestingly enough, after Rattle published his first video, Jacob Gabe, or Card Kahuna, actually reached out to him and threatened him with legal action, and then over Instagram also made some comments towards Rattle. So, there is this conversation history right here where Jacob says to Rattle, "Don't worry about me, buddy. Worry about you. I'm rich, young man worth over $150M." So that's an interesting way of writing that. The defamation lawsuit will be there for all business. I lost out due to your video. Defamation, you cut a podcast video of me that was 2 hours long and took a snippet that I said and made it out of context. I'm 10,000% sure this base set case is real. Rattle then asks, well, what was out of context? And Jacob was like, listen, start talking to a lawyer and a good one, because mine don't lose. Ooh, 150 mil, but you couldn't afford a fourth print base case. Weird. Yikes. Not that I couldn't afford it, but it's about being smart and about making these margins make sense. Either way, my guy, in your video, you didn't leave any possible doubt that it can be real. I'm good forever. Rattle, shout out to him, says 1,000 subscriber YouTuber ruined the $150 million man because he showed people a box looked painfully fake. LOL. Shout out to Rattle, because that was legendary. I'm sorry, but there was never a better clapback for someone under 10,000 subs. And then, nothing's ruined me. It's the point. I'm good forever, says Jacob. Here are some additional screenshots. So, this Card Kahuna fella says, good luck, buddy. Your 2 minutes of fame is about to expire. Probably in reference to Rattle's video, which honestly has blown up his account. Good for him, because that was amazing detective work done on his part. So he certainly deserves a lot of credit for pointing that out. And then Card Kahuna also says, spoke to all the big influencers. No one knows who you are and your insignificant life. So this guy was being, just pretty classic, defensive via insult. We see it all the time. People start chatting and start, complaining and this and that, mainly purposefully just to kind of insult people because they don't really have anything to say to defend themselves, because they know their actions are pretty much indefensible. Later on, and this is something that's alluded to here. Later, Rattle received a message from a separate Instagram account called Jacob Gabe, so I assume that's where they're getting his name from. But Jacob potentially says, I will pay you $500,000 to take the video down. This is my personal account. Logan can't open the box. So this account has 380 followers with 5 posts, and the message was at midnight local time. So absolutely hilarious, but it's pretty clear that, Rattle's video did in fact do the job of rattling Jacob, aka Card Kahuna, because, the guy was quote unquote willing to pay $500,000 just to make the video go away. Obviously, no one actually does that or would ever go through with that, but here we are. So, the article goes on to outline, hey, we believe it to be real. And yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, it's kind of awkward. Pokey Beach raises the interesting concern: if the message did come from Jacob, why wouldn't he want Logan Paul to open the box? Did he know something? Well, yeah, probably. The fact that he very clearly says Logan can't open the box is probably not in defense of the idea that it was the only sealed case of booster boxes that ever existed, because clearly they were fake to begin with. It's very likely, at least I believe, that Jacob did in fact know something, and that's why he, I guess, made the offer for 500,000 to take down the account. When you think about it, 500,000 is a lot of money, right? It's 1/7 of the 3.5 mil that the box was transacted for. So, safe to say it's quite a bit of money that he was offering. I don't think that was a real offer, by the way. I think that was hot air, but I think it was one of those things where he was trying everything he could, especially as Pokey Kahuna, or whatever this man's name is, Card Kahuna, saw that there was additional traction getting made and people were discussing whether or not the box would be opened. And maybe even after Logan Paul said, I would have the box authenticated, there was quite a bit of, pressure building and mounting that probably made him think like, oh, maybe I can speak to Rattle and have him take the videos down. I don't think anything was going to change at that point. So, one of Jacob's associates, and this is the part of the video that I am screaming at, one of Jacob's associates at the Pokeju was paid a finder's fee for vetting the eBay seller. However, he brushed off all warnings from individuals who warned him about the box's dubious history, even before the box was sold to not collectibles guru, but bald man who sold fake Pokemon cards to Logan Paul nonetheless. It remains to be seen whether this is because he knew something or because he was choosing to be willfully ignorant. Rattle stated, "You just know he's lying because everything contradicts itself. The stories always drastically change the next time he tells you, and the details that are essential to the story change completely." Yikes. So, here are some screenshots from the Pokeju. I don't know who is messaging. I don't know if this is Rattle or this is Pokey Beach, because later in this article, they do in fact confirm that they reached out to the Pokeju as well. But here we are, where the Pokeju says, in response to some of the screenshots, "We did all the due diligence, man. Doesn't really even matter what the story is. The case is authentic, and even in that story, there is nothing shady that makes it seem like the case was even tampered with." Yikes, yikes, yikes. Here's another screenshot. You can see it's the Pokeju because this is his Instagram pic. You got the version of the story with the house they purchased having boxes in the attic. See, this is one of the stories. And that version of the story was not the story I was made aware of. The one I'm made aware of was that it was from an estate or a yard sale, and the reason they were selling is because his nephew, was diagnosed with a form of leukemia and needed funds for that purpose. The variations of the origin stories I was aware of were the same but slightly different details, like it was his mother who was sick, not his nephew. So, let's stop right now and talk about this. I made a video last week talking about this. I mentioned that the Pokeju was there. I call the Pokeju an expert purely for the purposes of him being there to point out the fact that the boxes were fake. Now, in as much as the Pokeju's ability to identify a fake booster box is still intact, I think he is an expert because, he can very clearly point out that the box was fake, right? Here is where the other part of last week's video comes into play. This hobby is experiencing a crisis of competency. I know of the Pokeju purely tangentially, right? He's done his little press tour, being on a few YouTube channels. He's obviously done some pretty big deals. I'm not going to take away from the guy the fact that he does have a really cool Pokemon card collection. You should at least go look at his Instagram page if you don't know who he is, because he's a very big first edition enthusiast. He has boxes, he has slabs, top tier stuff. The thing is that just because you bought the stuff doesn't mean you're an expert. And this is where I think his, expertise is clearly being strained. I can't think of a legitimate reason why someone who was prior to this pretty well respected in our hobby would go as far as to ever say we did all the due diligence. Literally, YouTubers magnitudes of sizes smaller than him were pointing out pretty valid, pretty accurate red flags. And the golden rule in Pokemon is that if there are enough red flags, even one is usually enough, that make you question something about a box, you don't buy it. The vintage Pokemon just works like that, right? Unless you have a clear order and transaction history, unless there's like not some weird stuff going on, you don't buy it, because genuinely the risk is too great. And this was back when Pokemon boxes were tens of thousands of dollars. We're now talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I'm really, really disappointed in the way the Pokeju went about this, because it is very clear that he is one of those people that get assigned a level of expertise that clearly isn't there. He can verify what a fake booster box looks like, and that's because he owns a real one, but shame on him, because this just isn't right, and I don't think, his real due diligence ever occurred here. I think, again, as the Pokey Beach kind of points out, tons of individuals warned him about the box's dubious history, and he thought himself wiser, and insisted that the case is authentic, and even in that story there is nothing shady that makes it seem like the case was ever tampered with, other than the fact that it had the wrong barcode on it. Like, seriously? So this is one of those situations. Here's your crisis of competency playing out right in front of you. People don't know what they're talking about, and sometimes your follower count, sometimes your subscriber count, sometimes all of that in general does not add up to jack squat, because genuinely speaking, he messed up, and there's nothing else to say. I suppose the next real question would be, how does the Pokeju respond / come back from this? And honestly, I don't really know if I have an answer to that. I mean, I'll say this. This was a serious breach of quote-unquote the public trust, right? You go on Instagram, he's one of probably the most popular Instagrammers in the space, right? He doesn't, to my knowledge, have as big a presence on Twitter or on YouTube, but he's certainly one of the folks over there, right? So people look to him for a little bit of competency, and unfortunately, I think this was a pretty big gap and blunder in terms of competency, because, in no uncertain terms, he says, this is authentic. No, it wasn't. And, the fact that you were so thoroughly involved in the process is a little alarming when you think about the fact that we would hope that the same people we turn to for advice and support in this community would be competent enough to have spotted the red flags and not ignored many different warnings from many different individuals. It just goes to show you that, you need to be cautious, and if anything, multi-factor authentication is a real good thing to have, especially at such a high level. So here are some pretty interesting things. When Pokey Beach questioned the Pokeju over Instagram about his vetting process, he claimed he gathered a lot of evidence, but when asked us to provide us with said evidence, he said most of it was gone. So again, not really looking good for the Pokeju right now. I'm really, really disappointed in the way this is playing out, because, if we assume for a minute that he's actually a competent expert, he certainly isn't acting like one right now. And then it's also apparent that he didn't disclose any such evidence to the baseball card exchange. Now, in terms of the baseball card exchange, I think I've made my points pretty clear. I personally believe they were just playing outside their league. They could still very well be very competent graders of baseball packs. They shouldn't have done Pokemon, and if leaning on the Pokeju was their excuse as to why they felt comfortable enough to authenticate a Pokemon collectible, well then, clearly they didn't vet Pokeju good enough, because the Pokeju's performance in all of this was overall very disappointing. The baseball card exchange today issued a statement that they'll be halting all authentication of Pokemon products, and so this is what I had mentioned in the last video about, they said they would be halting the review of Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cases, no duh, because obviously they clearly have no clue what they're doing. In terms of legal fights, Logan Paul was able to get his $3.5 million back from his collector friend. However, that collector friend has yet to get his money back from Jacob and his associates, so this is just one of those things where I think this is going to play out in court more so than anything. Happy for Logan that he got his 3.5 mil back, but the money down the chain a little bit, I believe it was a grand total of $2.7 million. That $2.7 million is certainly not going to be something that is going to be easy for that collector to recollect and reclaim. Micha Birch is another item that this article briefly touches on. So in case you don't know, Micha Birch is he's just a resealer of product, and he does this pretty much on a pathological basis. His name did come up, and his Instagram is Pokey Butler. So a couple people pointed out that, he might have been involved in this. Here are some Instagram posts for him. He also had or has a YouTube channel where he used to try to open up packs as neatly as possible so that he could later reseal the packs. And then there's also evidence that he in fact bought a whole bunch of empty booster pack wrappers. So it is possible that he might have in some way, shape, or form been involved with this case. Now his name just came up because shockingly enough, Micha Birch actually admitted to being a Pokemon resealer. So, it's not a secret in the hobby as to what he does or, how he behaves. But what was fascinating was that, people immediately threw his name into the ring of possible culprits for having counterfeited Logan Paul's box. The article ends up wrapping up saying that if Micha Birch was involved, he probably didn't intend for the fake box to make its way to Logan Paul. He probably intended for it to kind of sit somewhere in a corner for like 20 years, and by that time he's long gone and has made his money. But if Logan Paul decides to take like any type of legal action, he could potentially shut down one of the hobby's biggest scammers, and that could potentially be a game-changing type of event. Again, many people berate Logan Paul for joining the hobby, etc., but I've always argued that there are some positives that come with big dollar spenders, including the legal teams and the potential for increased scrutiny by, regulatory bodies, by law enforcement bodies. And so in this particular case, if Logan makes enough noise, I'm sure $3.5 million in fraud is more than enough to get either the FBI or at least a local law enforcement agency involved in investigating where this box originated from. So just something to bear in mind. And then, Pokeju wraps up by saying, hey, a note to Logan Paul, please stop consulting these uninformed individuals. I have and will say the same thing again. This goes to all of you watching this video, as well as to Logan Paul, as well as anybody else. As much as I can be of help, and as much as I can use my 10 plus years, I'm talking more than a decade, not just popped up on Instagram yesterday type of experience, I will do my absolute best to help any of you with any concerns you have about a product, a purchase, or even something that is in your collection right now. So, like I said, like Pokey says, I've been running this YouTube channel for 2 years. Pokey is up for 19 years, and I've been a part of this community for more than a decade. So please feel free to reach out and contact me or them or someone if you have any concerns about anything. I think they say it perfectly here. We're not fair weather fans or hypers here. So, hopefully Logan Paul takes that advice. Like I said, if any of you need any help, definitely feel free to reach me out. Always happy to connect and help where I can. And yeah, that's where we end up. But guys, I definitely recommend checking out this article. Super good stuff. I covered it for 24 minutes almost, but I gotta say there's so much more here that you could dig into. So thanks again for your viewership. As always, friends, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, feel free to leave a like, and hey, subscribe if you're not already to join the Gengar Gang. Other than that, I hope you guys are having an amazing day, and we will talk soon. Peace.